Thank you, Fred. This is quite an occasion for me. It's the first time I've ever spoken to an American audience in my novels. And it means a lot to me. What I want to do is come at you from several different places at once, because that's how it is. My main complaint with critical attention that I've had is that scholars always try to systematize things. They make rectangular structures like scaffolding, and they say what Hoban does here is hook A up to B, which connects with C, and this goes back to X. And it doesn't go back that way. It's more of the way Buster Keaton used to make films. Somebody said to Keaton, "Is it true that your work is expressive of the fundamental dichotomy between the capitalist ethic and the working classes?" And he said, "Well, what I do is we do a scene and then we do another scene." And that's what I do. I get obsessed with images, with things that I see, or with pictures that come into my mind, or connections between one thing and another. I have a whole series of revolving obsessions that keep surfacing in all of my books, and there's no reason why they shouldn't, because if you are writing, if you are returning to the world your whole perception of it as well as you can, it doesn't matter whether you write about a hole in the fence or about the migrations of blue whales. Whatever you're writing about, if you go all out for it, it will hook up with everything else. So as I said, I want to come at you from several different directions. And first I want to show you, I have to move this so everybody can see it. I want to show you what got me started writing novels. This is the mouse and his child. Oh. Oh. And they actually dance. Is that pathos or what? And these toys are always made in two halves, and they're fastened together with little insubstantial clasps that break when you try to repair the toy. And the two halves never quite match up, which is expressive of the fundamental dichotomy between the left side and the right side. I'll have other places to come from. Next thing I want to do is read you a little piece called Blighters Rock. First I put on my reading glasses. Blighters Rock. You'll notice that I don't call it by its right name. Speaking its name, oh, I'll stop for a moment. There's going to be a reference to the South Bank Show. The South Bank Show is an arts program on ITV and British television, and it's presented by a very suave presenter named Melvin Bragg, who is more than the sum of his arts. Blighters Rock. You'll notice that I don't call it by its right name. Speaking its name might not actually bring it on, but why take foolish chances? I'm talking about a certain sort of stoppage or ongoing, not infrequently an ongoing, that sometimes afflicts those whose trade is the writing of fiction. One of the strange truths about fiction is that a practitioner writing with no difficulty on Monday may be utterly incapable of doing it on Tuesday. The poor blighter is suddenly rocked. "How's it going?" one's friends ask cheerfully. "It's not," one replies. "Can you pick it up from casual liaisons?" "Yes." "From toilet seats?" "Yes." "From reading the Sunday supplements? Watching the South Bank Show?" "Yes, yes." There are more ways of picking it up than not. Various writers deal with it in various ways. Alcohol and frequent snacks, the traditional folk remedies, do little to relieve the blankness of the page. Jogging has been known to result in the odd paragraph and a fair number of heart attacks. Hot baths and cold showers, travel, and other forms of escape are unproductive. One of the earliest symptoms is a growing dread of blank paper. And at this stage, preventative action may still have some effect. Certainly, in the mind-to-paper process, one's choice of paper is important. I always use 80-gram yellow A4. It's the kind of yellow the paper manufacturers call gold, and gold is what one is trying to refine the base metal of one's thought into, isn't it? While at the same time making a modest living if possible. Yellow paper definitely has less word resistance than blue. Yellow paper molecules are happier with black ink molecules than blue paper ones are, and more susceptible to Brownian or even purpureal motion. I never use white paper. To intensify the blankness of a blank sheet by using white paper is to run to meet trouble considerably more than halfway. 80 gram is the weight and A4 the size I prefer because 4 is a number associated with Hermes, which name, according to the Oxford Classical Dictionary, signifies the diamond who haunts or occupies a heap of stones, or perhaps a stone, set up by the roadside for some magical purpose. I'm haunted by that diamond. My desk is littered with stones, and I often handle them to feel the dance in the stone, which is magic enough for me, and will perhaps find its way onto the A4 paper with a little help from Hermes, the god of roadways, night journeys, chance, merchants, thieves, and writers who need all the help they can get on their night journeys through the blankness of paper. Why should a blank sheet of paper be frightening? Well, you never know what's going to find its way onto it, do you? H.P. Lovecraft said in the very first line of his story, The Call of Cthulhu, "The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents." Even scattered bits of the mind's contents are scary enough. Consider the piece of paper that was blank until there appeared on it E equals mc squared. What mind generated that equation? Einstein got it onto paper, but was Einstein's mind his alone? Is there an individual mind for each one of us? Is the blankness of the paper an individual blankness for every writer? The physicist Erwin Schrödinger, in his book Mind and Matter, his 1956 Tarner lectures at Trinity College, Cambridge, said, "Mind is by its very nature a singulare tantum. I should say the overall number of minds is just one." I think Schrödinger is right. Mind is a consciousness not confined to the individual brain, but shared by all of us. The brain is the organ that limits that consciousness so that we can carry on the business of every day in the consensual state we call reality. I think much, if not most, of the brain's function is repressive, holding back the accumulated contents of the mind as a dam holds back water, and only allowing such flow as will power those practical systems that get us through the day. If the dam ever broke, we should drown in the vast chaotic roar of a flood that would sweep away our limited reality consensus like a chicken coop. I know that the mind is ancient. We are descended from the dust of stars, and the mind is more ancient than the stars. The whole history of the universe is in it, and more. The limited reality consensus ignores the strangeness of our being and the strangeness of the consciousness that lives in us. It maintains a pretense of reasonable thought and action for reasonable objectives. With those thoughts and actions, we have achieved the world we find ourselves in now. On the title plate of Los Caprichos, Goya wrote, "The sleep of reason produces monsters." But reason, in our time, wide awake and staring, has gone a good way beyond anything that Goya, or even Goya and Lovecraft together, ever could have imagined. We have an appetite for terror. We amuse ourselves with horror films and horror stories. The idea of Lovecraft's monstrous dead Cthulhu waiting to come alive in his stone city of Rieh beneath the sea is not strange to us. There are receptors in the brain waiting for the neurotransmission of such ideas. Stephen King, whose chunky paperback horrors proliferate in airports, is undoubtedly a multimillionaire by now. And video shops everywhere are knee-deep in the unspeakable, from beyond the grave, the galaxy, and any boundaries of taste. The immensely successful film A Nightmare on Elm Street has gone into 3 sequels, and the marketing of Nightmare Toys. Muriel Gray reports on Channel 4's media show that Fred Krueger, the film's knife-digited and dream-stalking revenant, is now available as a cuddly little Freddy Christmas tree toy. The possibility that child killer Freddy will displace the teddy bear on the pillows of young phobophiles to help them make it through the night cannot be ruled out. A Nightmare on Elm Street was written and directed by Wes Craven and is impressive in that its impact comes not from its special effects and nasty makeup, but from a really scary idea. Fred Krueger's intended victims dare not sleep because dreams are the channel by which he enters reality. In what appears to be their final confrontation, the girl whom Krueger has been trying to kill seems to defeat him by a negative cathexis. Nancy, I take back every bit of energy I gave you. You're nothing. You're shit. Krueger, dematerializing. Ah! At that point, however, there's still more to come. The end, which I shall not reveal, if there's anybody in the world who hasn't seen, leaves us with no clear distinction between nightmare and waking, no place of safety whatever, and the very nature of reality in question. Millions of filmgoers, and I as well, found it entertaining. Perhaps we even felt at home with it. Why is that? Rilke, in the first of his Duino elegies, said, "Beauty is nothing but the beginning of terror." I'm going to pause and get into that a little bit. I mean, just think about it. It's a hell of a thought. Beauty is nothing but the beginning of terror. I mean, think of whatever image comes to your mind as the most beautiful one that you can think of. For me, the Vermeer girl, the Head of a Young Girl by Vermeer is one of the first things that comes. Well, you look at her eyes, you look at her face, and there is beauty. It's brilliant. It's like a lightning flash of beauty. And if that lightning flash of beauty is extended infinitely, it becomes intolerable. It gets all the way into something else because it's impossible to define where the response to beauty comes from and where it goes carried to its ultimate degree. There is indeed such a spectrum. Look at Vermeer's Head of a Young Girl, for example. There are reproductions of it everywhere. If you follow your mind into the look with which that girl looks out at you, you come to Thing in Itself and the terror at the back of her eyes. You come to what waits in the blank paper, the ungraspable isness of what is. In trying to take hold of it, the mind finds only the incomprehensibility of itself and the original terror of creation, the bursting into being of something out of nothing. And yet the mind, this one mind that we all share, is hungry for that terror. In the original terror is the vital energy that is the beginning of beauty and everything else, perhaps even a better understanding of the human situation. When it comes at you out of the blank paper, it's difficult to sort out what wants to be put into words, and it isn't always possible to look straight at it. That's why any blighter can find himself or herself rocked from time to time. But with patience, blank paper of the right kind, and a favoring road from Hermes, one gets unrocked often enough to make it worth the bother. Now I want to carry on with my several different things. Right, here. Because, you wouldn't be here if you weren't interested in how I function, and what I'm trying to show you is how I function, which is not in a straight line and not in rectangular scaffoldings, but in a 365-degree periphery from which various things come at me from various places. So, I go to the British Museum with my 12-year-old son Wieland, and we find ourselves standing in front of a case in which there is the head of a goddess found near Mersin, Cilicia, Greek, 2nd century BC. And what happens when we go to the museum, he's a good guy to go to a museum with because we usually find ourselves fastening on one thing together. We'll go through various parts of the museum until finally something hits us. This is where it is today for us. It's the one that we get our fix on. And this day, and also our next visit months later, it was still this same head of a goddess. And so I wrote down some notes in my notebook, and then I typed them up on my computer. And I have it. I don't know whether this will find its way into a novel or anything else, but this is part of my mental inventory. This is part of the furnishing of the inside of my head. This is part of my idea and image network. And this is connected with everything. I mean, if you let your mind go the way that I think the human mind naturally wants to go, This is not separate from the mouse and his child, and it's not separate from Vermeer's portrait of a young girl. It's not separate from the lion biting the wheel of King Ashurbanipal's chariot. It's not separate from St. Eustace treading water and praying here. It's all one thing which comes at you in various manifestations and hooks up in various ways. So, okay, I'll read you my notes about the head of a goddess. A thin shell of bronze with a dark green patina, almost a mask, because the back of the head is lacking. The edges of its incompleteness follow pleasingly the undulations of the hair. The dark beauty of the face is illumined by its own thought. The face is rounded, sensual, a face to be taken in a lover's hands, a face to be felt against one's naked shoulder. But the thought that illumines the face is lean. The whites of the eyes were painted in, and the paint is worn off in such a way that the dark and the light give the impression of an upward seductive look when viewed from above. When I brought my face down to the level of her eyes, her look changed to one of fear and doubt. At first I wanted to photograph, but then I considered how easily the photograph, rather than the reality, becomes the remembered image. No, I thought, better to be haunted by whatever my mind held of her, that alone. I walked away and returned many times. Perhaps, I thought, she wants nothing to do with me. Perhaps I'm intruding on her privacy. Shocking that she should be on public view in a glass case in the British Museum. Or is it her function to haunt as many minds as possible? Goddess, Aphrodite? Certainly this is the essence of Aphrodite, to haunt, to linger poignantly in the mind, to fill the mind with never-to-be-satisfied longings. And did not Aphrodite give birth to Deimos and Phobos, terror and fear? Okay, pointed out the lion and how that is connected with everything. The next thing I want to mention is Punch and Judy, which gets us a little closer to Ridley Walker. I only took carry-on luggage because I have to change planes a whole lot of times to get to other places. So I left behind, I have a head of Punch that was made by Fred Tickner, who is the authoritative punch maker. But you don't need it. It's better actually without it. I mean, what is Punch? Punch is 3 fingers. There are 2 fingers and a thumb. Punch is the index finger that does this. Punch is this finger that does other things. Punch is the thumb, the opposableness of which gives us our tool-making and tool-using facility. So Punch is all of that. Punch is the Trinity. Punch is all kinds of things. And he's a kind of primordial system of gesture, primordial manifestation of the right hand, maybe at the same time being the left hand that doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Well, leave you with that thought for a moment. Stones. I have a little photocopy here, but it's not big enough for everybody to see it from a distance, of the crypt at Canterbury Cathedral. That's where Ridley Walker has his perception of wood into stone and the wood in the stone. Now, I'll hold it up just for the sake of holding it up. You can't see it, but here are the Norman arches with the parallel carvings on them, and here's the vaulting that spreads out northeast, south, and west from each of the columns like the branches of a tree. And it's a crypt, it's a deep place in the ground, and it's stone that goes beyond just being stone. It's stone that is an activity of molecules and atoms that is playing itself over and over again in that shape in your mind while you take it in. And in this stone that is becoming a forest of stone trees, there's also the stone of the great stones on the beach that the sea is breaking on, and the dance in those stones. Okay, I've got through a number of images that I got more before I actually do some reading. This is from the Medusa frequency, and the less than successful writer Hermann Orff on the banks of the Thames finds the head of Orpheus washed up in the mud, and they get into a conversation. And in the course of the conversation, Herman Orff, the less than successful writer, is remembering a woman named Louisa who left him some time ago. Does anyone fully perceive anyone else? I said. I began to cry. Cry on my face, said the head. Maybe my eyes will grow back. Is there healing in my tears? I don't know. I'll try anything. Maybe you ought to stop trying. You're old, you're blind and rotten, you can't sing anymore. Why don't you just pack it in? I haven't that choice. There's no way for me to cease to be. I'm manifesting myself to you as a rotting head, but there's no picture for what I am. I am that which sings the world. I am the response that never dies. Fidelity is what's wanted. Fidelity. I got my head zapped looking for a novel, and here I am listening to homilies from a rotting head. You don't know what you're looking for, said the head. Alone and blind and endlessly voyaging, I think constantly of fidelity. Fidelity is a matter of perception. Nobody is unfaithful to the sea or to mountains or to death. Once recognized, they fill the heart. In love or in terror or in loathing, one responds to them with the true self. Fidelity is not an act of the will. The soul is compelled by recognitions. Anyone who loves, anyone who perceives the other person fully can only be faithful, can never be unfaithful to the sea and the mountains and the death in that person. So pitiful and heroic is it to be a human being. Again, I felt the pain across my chest and down my left arm. If you're going to take a high moral tone, you'd better find someone else to talk to. I said, I'm not up to it. Do you think about fidelity sometimes, said the head. Sometimes. Years after Louisa had gone, I found inside a copy of Rilke's Neue Gedichte, her recipe for bread. I'd never seen her use a written-down recipe, but there it was in her writing on a folded-up, faint-ruled notebook page marking Orpheus Euridica Hermes. 1.5 kilograms granary flour, 2 dessertspoons oil, 1 dessertspoon salt, 1 tablespoon caraway seeds, 2 tablespoons dried yeast, 1.5 pints of water, blood warm, 1 teaspoon sugar. Put flour in a bowl, add oil and caraway seeds, put sugar and yeast in a jug, add a little of the warm water. Leave for 10 to 15 minutes in a warm place to froth, add salt to warm water. When yeast dissolved, add to the flour and water, stir, then turn onto a floured board and knead 10 to 15 minutes until it is elastic. Put back in bowl, cover, leave to rise in warm place. When doubled in size, take out, divide into 2, knead and thump, shape into loaves, and put in greased tins. Cover, leave for 10 minutes in a warm place, then put in oven and bake at 220 degrees for 40 to 45 minutes. The smell of the brown loaves was like fidelity. Oh yeah, I've got a lot to get through here. I hope 2 hours is going to be enough. We may have to put you up in a hotel or something where they do with jurors when things go on for a long time. I'm sure the university will take care of that. Right. Okay, this is... let's see. I'll start with talking a little bit about the St. Eustace painting, because this... Where Ridley Walker came from was that Punch and Judy were hanging around in my head, and I went to Canterbury Cathedral. I was invited to Canterbury to do a talk for the teachers there. And when I got there, I think there were 3 people in the audience, including me. And they explained that it was, I don't know, it was end of term, there were examinations, the wells had been poisoned, there was a plague. And so I did my talk, and the next day, the head of department whose house I was staying at, felt compelled to make it up to me. He took me around to Canterbury Cathedral, and that's where I first encountered this. It didn't look like this. The original painting is about 10 feet high, and it's set up fairly high in the wall. And what I saw was only a faint earth green tracery. That was all that remained of it. This photograph is of a reconstruction made by Dr. Tristram, which was divided up sectionally and was on the wall of the north aisle with the legend of St. Eustace accompanying it, printed out on cards. I stood and looked at the thing. And at that time, I was in pretty much of a turmoil myself. I'd left my wife and kids, and she'd gone back to the States, and I was all alone in the world. And I saw this thing, and here's St. Eustace. He was a commander of cavalry under the Emperor Trajan, goes out hunting in the woods, sees a stag, and in between the horns of the stag, the antlers, there's Jesus crucified. He makes a vow, throws away his weapons and all that, sells all his worldly goods, and he's going to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem with his wife and his 2 sons. So, okay, they get a boat, and the boat is managed by pirates, and they take away his wife. So Eustace, nothing daunted, carries on with the 2 boys, and he comes to a river, crosses the river with the first kid, and leaves him there. He comes back for the second one. While he's in the middle of the river, the first boy is carried off by a wolf, and the second one, before he can reach him, is carried off by a lion. So there go the kids. And Eustace continues, and then the story picks up again, where Eustace is back in work with the Romans again, and after a victory, he refuses to offer. He's been reunited with his. I don't know, he must have paid the ransom or something. The pirates gave his wife back, I guess. He's reunited with the wife and the kids, and he's working for the Romans again, and they have a victory, and he refuses to offer incense. So they for that occasion, they have a brazen bull on hand, and they put Eustace and the wife and kids in the brazen bull, and they light a fire under it. And the souls of Eustace and the wife and kids ascend to heaven, where they're gathered up in a big safety net by a couple of angels, and off he goes to beatification. So anyhow, standing there, with nothing in my head, and I'm looking at Eustace there. Says it all. There he is, in the middle of the river. Geez, I hope things get better. Yeah. And I had a strong fellow feeling for Eustace, and I'm standing there. Now, Punch and Judy come into my head again. I'm thinking Punch and Judy. All of a sudden, I get the idea what about an England, all desolate, everything all shot to hell, burnt up, destroyed after a big nuclear deal, and everybody is reduced to a semi-primitive state, and there are wild dogs roaming the country, killing everybody. They get their paws on, and living in fenced-in settlements, and the only government has its decrees promulgated by wandering puppeteers who tell the story of St. Eustace in a corrupted and government-twisted version. All right, let's give that a try. So that was my act of fidelity to what came at me in Canterbury Cathedral. Yeah, I'm not all that good at it with people, but with cathedrals I'm good. So anyhow, this was my first, this is dated 14th of May, 1974, which is when I first had a go at a first chapter of what became Ridley Walker. It took me 5.5 years to get it done, and the 5.5 years were mainly spent in getting rid of what didn't belong there. Because after the first 2 years, I had 500 pages, and they weren't it, so I discarded them. And the 500 pages were not just written straight ahead. I'd get to page 37, go back to page 1, get to page 43, go back to page 15, so forth and so on, back and forth. After 5 years, I discarded the 200 page, 500 pages, yeah, it was 500 pages, I think, and started again. And this time, I realized that what it wanted to be was pretty spare and pretty bare, and not too many people, not covering not too much ground, but doing it in a concentrated way. Anyhow, this was my first attempt at realizing the puppeteers in this desolate landscape coming into Ridley's little fenced-in settlement. It's got some scribbling over the typing, so rather than read all the alternate versions, I'll just read the one that first leaps to the eye with each sentence. The name of St. Eustace has been corrupted to USA. It's been said that that signifies the USA. I don't rule that out. That's not what I was thinking of when I simply wore down the name Eustace to USA, just let it slide a little bit. But USA is okay because that's where the atom bomb was first done. The USA man stood outside in the rain and sent his partner in first. The partner was well over 6 feet tall, had a bow and a quiver of arrows on his back, and he had a big knife and 4 rabbits hanging from his belt. He had hands that looked as if they could break anything or squeeze it to death. You'll notice this is in standard English still. He poked about with his spear, looked here and there behind things. He seemed to take in the place with all his senses at once, took in the feel of it as an animal would. The USA man stood with his bundle on his back and leant on his stick while the steam came up from his sweating back and the dog sniffed him. He didn't seem to notice the rain. The dogs here are not yet killer dogs. These are just ordinary dogs. He didn't seem to notice the rain that came down on his little old hat or the mud he stood in. Okay, said the partner. The USA man bent down so his bundle would clear the opening and came inside. Watcher, he said. Tobacco, I said, 1 handweight. Rizzlers, he said, matches. 2 50s of Rizzlers, I said, 100 matches. Okay, he said. He unslung the bundle and sat down. His partner sat in the opening where he could see both inside and outside. I took out pen and ink and paper. The USA man shook his head. No writing, he said. I have to, I said. It's all right, I take it on me. I'm vowed. Show me the scar, he said. I showed him my scar. The USA man and his partner muttered between themselves. Watcher, said the USA man. I'll give you another handweight of tobacco, I said. Another 100 Rizzlers and another 100 matches. Okay, said the USA man. He rolled 2 cigarettes, gave one to his partner. They both lit up. Their smoke drifted out into the rain and up through the smoke hole. The USA man undid his bundle, laid out the sticks and canvas of his fit-up, took the figures out of a bag. He had thick, strong brown hands with a thick callus round each index finger. His face was strong and brown and quick-looking, with sharp blue eyes. He laid out the figures and the props on the ground. Counting the animals, there is 15 figures in a USA show, he said. There is USA and his horse. There's the stag with little Jesu in his horns. There's USA's wife, 2 sons, the captain and the ship, the wolf and the lion. Here is the messenger and 3 soldiers. The soldiers is all on 1 stick. You work them with 1 hand when they fights USA. Here is the Hadri 1 king. Here is Jack Scratch and the brazen bull. Here is the angel. This here is the doler. This is the sorrowful voice of USA, how he speaks. It sits on this little frame round your neck. You talk into it for USA, but not for the others. USA has no luck. He is the sorrowful and unlucky man. You hear the children sing when the USA man comes. USA, USA, what a life. Lost his children, lost his wife. They know it's not no jolly thing. You'll hear them singing. No rumpa, no dum, no Xantigan, USA come. They run it together like that. Xantigan is Xanting when. They know you don't make rumpa and you don't beat dumb, and there's no Xanting allowed when USA comes. I looked at the doler. It was a small tin open at both ends with some kind of membrane inside. That's lambskin, he said, with wires behind it that vibrate when you speak. He put the frame round his neck, put USA on his left hand and the stag on his right. USA is always on the left, which is sinister, he said. Which word, as you will know, comes from sin. USA has been a sinful man and he is left. Goodness has left him. He is riding a horse out hunting when he sees the stag. I can't do the horse and stag both without I have the stage set up. At first the stag is on a peg and I work the head with a wire from my foot so I have both hands free for USA and the horse. It's always a one-man show, you see. That's the nature of it and its proper character, which is symbolic. It isn't only itself, you see. It is any number of other things beyond which you may have no notion of. I speak as I was taught. It is a mystery, although you may think it simple enough. That is where we get the word symbol. Not simple, but symbol. USA is a symbol man, from the symbolic nature of the play. When he gets off the horse, I work the stag with my right hand. The stag shakes his head and shows him Jesu, the little silver Jesu in his horns. The figures came alive on his hands, USA clutching his spear, while the stag shook his horns, in which a little silver Jesu, that, as you may notice, is the real solid said the UCA man, passed from father to son, not to be bought, hung on a cross. The dolor acted as a little echo chamber in which the sorrowful voice of UCA resounded. "UCA, UCA, UCA," cried the stag. "UCA," answered UCA, "that's me." He leveled his spear at the stag. "That's not the way to do it," said the stag. "Look on Jesus, see Jesus." "Oh, no, I won't," said UCA. "The children all know it by heart," said the UCA man. They all shout, "Oh, yes, you will." "Hear him, UCA," said the stag. "Look on Jesus." "I'm the hunter," said UCA. His wooden face was sad and pale. His painted eyes seemed full of fear. "You will be the prey," said the stag. Here the children all shout, "Pray, UCA," said the UCA man. They know it all by heart. "Pray, UCA," said the stag. "Make your vow and start your journey." "And that's how it begins," said the UCA man. He laid the figures down again. The life went out of them and back into his everyday hands. We does a long pitch or a short one depending on the take. When we does the whole show with all the scenes, it goes an hour maybe. It's hard graft and it's a one-man job. "Do you know what a swazzle is?" I said. The partner swung his head round and looked ready to spring to his feet with a spear in his hand. "There isn't nothing in it, what you hear about that," said the UCA man. "That's all a load of cobblers. There's no power in it nor nothing like what they say. They may make their noises and have their figures, but there's nothing in it, and don't you say nothing about it while I'm here. It's unlucky." The foragers were coming back. Evening sounds and voices and cooking smells drifted through the rain. "Whose meat we pray?" said the partner. "Our meat, your meat," I said. "Eat here, sleep here." "You the head man here?" said the partner. "You don't look like head man." "I'm not," I said, "but I can offer." "You a connection man?" said the UCA man. I nodded. "Okay," said the UCA man. "Mercy plenty. This time you, next time us. Our rabbits in your pot," said the partner. "Mercy plenty," I said. On the way to the divvy place, we passed a boy stamping in a puddle. He must have seen the UCA man earlier with his bundle and recognized the look of it and the look and walk of the man. He sang as he stamped in his puddle. "No rumpa, no dum, no Xantig and UCA come." The UCA man and his partner were a little way ahead of me, and I don't think they heard what the boy said next, very softly, under his breath. "Root-toot-toot-toot-to-it." And that's the end of the first scene that I tried during Ridley Walker. Let me see how our time is running. Okay, I think now I'll read the beginning of Ridley Walker. We started at 7, tried to get through all the things that I need to get through by 9, and then if we have more time left over, that's fine. I'll leave plenty of time for questions too, so I'll just read the beginning of Ridley Walker, and then you can ask me anything you like. On my naming day, when I come 12, I gone front spear and kilt a wild boar. He probably been the last wild pig on the Bundle Downs anyhow. There hadn't been none for a long time before him, nor I ain't looking to see none again. He didn't make the ground shake nor nothing like that when he come onto my spear. He weren't all that big, plus he looked poorly. He done the required. He turned and stood and clattered his teeth and made his rush, and there we were then. Him on one end of the spear kicking his life out, and me on the other end watching him die. I said, "Your turn now, my turn later." The other spear's gone in then, and he were dead, and the steam coming up off him in the rain, and we all yelled, "Offered!" The whole thing felt just that little bit stupid. Us running that boar through that last little scrump of woodling with the forms all round, cows mooing, sheep baaing, cocks crowing, and us foraging our last boar in a thin gray gurzel on the day I come a man. The burnt horse pack been following just out of bow shot. When the shout gone up, their ears all pricked up. Their leader, he were a big black and red spotted dog. He come forward a little, like he'd been going to make a speech or something, till one or two blokes up at bow. Then he slumped back again and kept his farness following us back. I took notice of that leader, though. He weren't close enough for me to see his eyes, but I thought his eye been on me. Coming back with the boar on a pole, we come along by the river, it were heavier wooded in there. Through the gurzel, you could see blue smoke hanging in between the black trees and the stumps, pink and red, where they'd been lopped off. Older trees in there, and charcoal burners in amongst them, working their hearts. You could see one of them in there with his red jumper, what they always wear, making charcoal for the iron ready at Widder's dump. Everyone made the bad luck go away sign when we passed him. There's a story, call it Heart of the Wood, this is it, Heart of the Wood. There is the Heart of the Wood in the UCA story. I will write down the UCA story when I come to it. That were a stag, everyone knows that. There is the heart of the wood, meaning the various deep of it, that's another thing. There is the heart of the wood where they burn the charred coal, that's another thing again, isn't it? That's another thing. Burning the charred coal in the heart of the wood. That's what they call the stack of wood, you see. The stack of wood in the shape they do it for charred coal burning. Why do they call it the heart, though? That's what this here story tells of. Everyone knows about bad time and what come after. Bad time first and bad times after. Not many come through it alive. There come a man and a woman and a child out of a burning town. They sheltered in the woodlands and foraging the best they could. Starveling were what they were doing. Didn't have no weapons, nor didn't know how to make a snare, nor nothing. Snow on the ground and a gray sky overing, and the black trees rubbing their branches in the wind. Crows calling one to another, waiting for the three of them to drop. The man, the woman, and the child digging through the snow. They were eating moss and dead leaves, which they vomited them up again. Freezing cold they were, nor didn't have nothing to make a fire with to get warm. Starveling they were, and near come to the end of their strength. The child said, "Oh, I'm so cold, I'm afeard I'm going to die. If only we had a little fire to get warm at." The man didn't have no way of making a fire. He didn't have no flint and steel nor nothing. Wood all round them, only there weren't no way he know it of getting warm from it. The three of them ready for Auntie, they were ready to total and done, when there come through the woodlings a clever-looking bloke and singing a little song to hisself. "My roding's been so hungry, I've grown so very thin. I've got a little cook-pot, but nothing to put in." The man and the woman said to the clever-looking bloke, "Do you know how to make fire?" The clever-looking bloke said, "Oh, yes, if I know anything, I know that right enough. Fire's my middle name, you might say." The man and the woman said, "Would you make a little fire, then? We're freezing of the coal." The clever-looking bloke said, "That for you, and what for me?" The man and the woman said, "What do we have for what fors?" They look at one to the other, and both at the child. The clever-looking bloke said, "I will tell you what I will do. I will share you my fire and my cook-pot if you will share me what to put in the pot." He were looking at the child. The man and the woman, the man and the woman thought, 2 out of 3 alive is better than 3 dead. They said, "Done." They killed the child and drunk its blood and cut up the meat for cooking. Clever-looking bloke said, "I will show you how to make fire, plus I will give you flint and steel and makings, nor you don't have to share me nothing of the meat, only the heart." Which he made the fire then, and give them flint and steel and makings. Then he cooked the heart of the child and ate it. The clever-looking bloke said, "Cleverness is gone now, but little by little it will come back. The iron will come back again one day, and when the iron comes back, they will burn charred coal in the heart of the wood. And when they burn the charred coal, their stack will be the shape of the heart of the child." Off he gone then, singing, "Seed of the little, seed of the wild, seed of the burning is heart of the child." The man and the woman then, eating their child, it were black night all round them. They made their fire bigger and bigger, trying to keep the black from moving in on them. They fell asleep by their fire, and the fire biggering on, It ate them up. They burnt to death. They've been the old ones, you might say, the old ones, and become charred coal. That's why they will tell you the older tree is best for charring coal. Sometimes you will hear of an older kincher. He carries off children. Out goes the candle, out goes the light, out goes my story, and so good night. Coming past that older wood that Gursley morning, I felt my stomach go cold, like the older kincher been putting eye on me. No one never had nothing much to do with the charcoal burners, only the dyers on the forms. Once a year, the charcoal burners, they come into the forms for their new red cloth, but in between, they kept to the woodlings. It were full of the moon that night. The rain little off, the sky cleared, and the moon come up. We put the boar's head on the pole up on top of the gatehouse. His tusks glimmered, and you could see a dried up trickle from the corners of his eyes, like one last tear from each. Old Lorna Elswind, our tell-woman, up there getting the tell of the head. Little kids down below playing fool's circle nine-wise, singing, "Horny boy rung widder's bell, stole his father's ham as well. Burnt his arse and forked a stone, done it over, broke a bone. Out of Goodshore vacked his weight, scratched Sam's itch for number 8. Gone to center next to see Cambry coming 3 times 3. Sharna packs and get the pole when the ardship of Cambry comes out of the hole." Little two-way Digman being the ardship going round the circle till it come chopping time. He busted out after the 3rd chop. I used to be good at that. I always rather it be the ardship nor one of the circle. I like it the busting out part. I gone up to the platform. I took Lorna a nice tender line of the boar. She was sitting up there in her doss bag. She'd been smoking. She were high. I give her the meat, and I said, "Lorna, will you tell for me?" She said, "Ridley, Ridley, there's more to life nor asking and telling. Why don't you be the big boar, and I will be the moon sow? When the moon sow comes to season, aye, she wants a big one, wants the big boar heavy on her. Aye, big boar what makes the ground shake, wild of the woodling with a white tusk. Aye, that wild big one for the moon sow." She sung that in my ear. Then we freshened the luck up there on top of the gatehouse. She was the oldest in our crowd, but her voice weren't old. It made the rest of her seem young for a little. It were a cold night, but we were warm in that doss bag, listening to the dogs howling afterwards and the wind wuthering and wearying and nattering in the oak leaves, looking at the moon all cold and white and lonesome. Lorna said to me, "You know, Ridley, there's something in us, it don't have no name." I said, "What thing is that?" She said, "It's some kind of thing. It ain't us, but yet it's in us. It's looking out through our eye holes. Maybe you don't take no notice of it, only sometimes. Say you get woke up sudden in the middle of the night. One minute you're asleep, and the next you're on your feet with a spear in your hand. Well, it weren't you put that spear in your hand. It were that other thing what's looking out through your eye holes. It ain't you, nor it don't even know your name. It's in us, lorn and lone and sheltering how it can." I said, "If it's in every one of us, there's more than one of it. There's got to be a manying, there's got to be a millying and more." Lorna said, "Well, there is a millying and more." I said, "Well, if there's such a manying of it, why is it lorn then? Why is it lone?" She said, "Because the manying and the millying, it's all one thing. It don't have nothing together with. You look at lichens on a stone, it's all them tiny manyings of it, and maybe each part of it might think it's separate, only we can see it's all one thing. That's how it is with what we are. It's all one girt big thing and divvied up amongst the many. It's all one girt thing, bigger nor the whirl and lorn and lone and ownsome. Tremoring it is in fear. It puts us on like we put on our clothes. Sometimes we don't fit. Sometimes it can't find the armholes and it tears us apart. I don't think I took all that much notice of it when I've been young. Now I'm old, I notice it more. It don't really like to put me on no more. Every morning I can feel how it's tired of me and readying to throw me away. I will tell you something, Ridley, and keep this in remembrance. Whatever it is, we don't come natural to it." I said, "Lorna, I don't know what you mean." She said, "We ain't a natural part of it. We didn't begin when it begun, we didn't begin where it begun. It been here before us, nor I don't know what we are to it. Maybe we are just only sickness and a fever to it, or boils on the arse of it, I don't know. Now listen to what I'm going to tell you, Ridley. It thinks us, but it don't think like us. It don't think the way we think. Plus, like I said before, it's a feart. I said, what's it a feart of? She said, it's a feart of being birthed. I said, how can that be? You said it had been here before us. If it'd been here all this time, it must have been birthed sometime. She said, no, it ain't been birthed. It never does get birthed. It's always in the room of things. It's always on the road. I said, all this, what you just been telling, be that a tell for me. She laughed then. She said, Ridley, there ain't nothing what ain't a tell for you. The wind in the night, the dust on the road, even the leastest stone you kick along in front of you, even the shatter of that leastest stone rolling on or standing still, it's all telling. Well, I can't say for certain no more if I had any of them things in my mind before she told me, but ever since then it seems like they always been there. Seems like I've been always thinking on that thing in us, what thinks us, but it don't think like us. Our whole life is an idea we didn't think of. No, we don't know what it is. What a way to live. That's why I finally come to writing all this down, thinking on what the idea of us might be, thinking on that thing what's in us, lorn and lone and lonesome. Now that's 8 o'clock. I'm sure there must be some questions, and when I start answering, I usually go on for a while, so let me hear your questions.
What was Auntie?
Auntie?
Yeah.
Well, she's a death figure, and that's what she is. Why? Where does she come from? You know, in Hindu mythology, there's the goddess Kali, who is the consort of Shiva, and she has her sweet, sexy female manifestation, and then she has the other one where she's got a necklace of skulls around her neck and she's dancing on corpses. And she is part of the whole idea in all kinds of mythologies that divides the female principle up into 3 aspects of the young maiden who becomes the wife and the mother, and then the old crone who becomes the terrifying anti-male aspect for one reason or another. Why did mythologies happen that way, I don't know. But whether for wisdom or because for the special attributes of the female as opposed to the male, there is that in mythology. So Auntie is in a way parallel to the Medusa figure. And in Ridley Walker, one of the folk tales that is told is the one about the bloke who got on top of Auntie. That is, when everybody was dying, he went looking for her because he was so worked up that he wanted to do it now. And she was so impressed that she let him live. Lois, you had a question.
Yeah, maybe you would like to tell us how you got from that, the first part that you were talking about, the yellow, what you read us from your yellow pages, to what you read us now in terms of the change in point of view and the rest, or if you can,
Well, the point of view is still the same. It's still first-person narration by Ridley.
Okay, that is Ridley. The I there is...
The I there is Ridley. And the change is principally in the language. All that happened was that as I carried on writing, it began to slip and slide into the language that it finally became. And I would break up long words into shorter ones and twist the shorter ones so that no confidence became no kind of fence and that kind of thing. And as I worked, I kept a word list so that if I put in a new word on page 113, then I would go back and make sure that that same word appeared whenever the same thing was meant earlier on.
I was wondering how you kept track. actually, of that.
And although the topographer did quite well, there were still some places where proper spelling crept in where it wasn't meant, and there is not a perfectly printed edition of Ridley Walker anywhere because it has never gone through that many corrective stages. Yeah.
It's Harga-warga. I mean, it's eating. Right?
Yeah, it's onomatopoeic. It's a devouring kind of thing. Yeah. Yes?
A couple of your books have been made into films. How involved were you in that process?
How involved was I in the process? Not at all, and it's a mystery to me. I mean, the first of my books was made into a film was The Mouse and His Child. It was made into an animated feature by DeFaria, Lockhart, Sanrio. And they took perfectly good dialogue that I'd written, and they replaced it with less good dialogue that somebody else wrote. I'll never understand that. I mean, they come at you and they say, hey, whoa, wow, we think your book is terrific, and, you know, grovel, grovel, what a nice thing, and, you know, let us give you money for it. It's fine, give me the money, take the book. And then they say, now what we need to do is make it a little more accessible and tighten it up dramatically so that it's shit. And I had nothing to do with it other than taking the money. Then the next time it happened was with Turtle Diary. And this time, well, I had several goes around with that. The first time, I almost sold it to the BBC. They wanted to do it as a two-part TV thing, and the money wasn't all that big. I think they were offering £7,000 for the two-part thing, and there was a writer who had got the BBC interested in it, and he wanted to do the adaptation. Fine. And he and his wife came round to dinner one time, and he was telling us, my wife and me, that he expected to start work on it such and such a time, and he said, when we get back from France, when things are so hectic, we have to get away to our house in France for a while. And I thought, shit, I don't want to have anything to do with a guy that when things get too hectic, he goes to his little house in France. So, so I turned down that deal. And the next one was from a group called UBA, United British Artists, and the founding members of this included Harold Pinter, Glenda Jackson, Ben Kingsley, Maggie Smith, and Richard Johnson, and various other august personages. And they wanted to do it, and I was given the right of I was given approval of the screenwriter and the major casting. So I'm not an idiot. I know that if the name of the screenwriter is Harold Pinter, they got a good chance of getting money to make the film. And the same thing with Glenda Jackson and Ben Kingsley. So I said, fine. So then Pinter took out the Hoban dialogue and stuck in Pinter's shtick. And that was that. Made a deeply shallow film. And there I was, thinking that next time at least I'll get more money for it before I let them make a deeply shallow film of anything of mine. So that's the extent to which I was involved in the two films made of books of mine. Yeah.
Are there any authors that have influenced you in your writing?
Yes, but not the way that you might think. Nobody has influenced me stylistically. Authors have exerted an influence over me to bear in mind certain standards of writing, so that Dickens has fostered in me a recognition of a certain kind of energy in writing that is a good thing to aim for. I never tried to write in Dickens's style, but I try to get as much energy into my writing as possible. Conrad also, for the density and the wovenness of it. Conrad's writing is like muscle fiber almost. And it's very dense, and Conrad, I'm laughing now because what I'm about to say, with a system of baffles and screens, he keeps you from getting to the heart of the matter until he wants you to. A guy came and interviewed me one time. In England, people get tiny grants. They get a 10-pound grant to found a magazine with. And so this guy came with his 10-pound grant. He had a little magazine he was doing. He wanted to interview me. And I told him about Conrad and his baffles and screens. So the guy went home and he used 3 pounds of his 10-pound grant to get another person to type it out, to transcribe the interview for him. And she typed out battles and screams. So anyhow, from Conrad, I learned about battles and screams, and I try to get a lot of that in my writing. But I don't try to write like Conrad, and I defy anybody to find any influence in my work, because it ain't there. Except in my Francis books, somebody very astutely pointed out that in Bread and Jam for Francis, when Albert unpacks and eats his lunch, he is doing it pretty much the way Nick Adams prepared the meal in Great Two-Hearted River by Ernest Hemingway. And I acknowledge that influence. I do think that I had Hemingway in mind when I was writing that down with verbs and nouns and a minimum of adjectives and simple declarative sentences. Yeah.
In the short story, The Man with the Dagger.
The Man with the Dagger.
And the skeletons, where did they come from?
What do you mean where'd they come? There's skeletons all over. Everybody's got one inside. A whole room full of skeletons here.
That's right. And the flickering of the light when it goes to you're in color and then it goes to black and white.
Yeah. Well.
Can you explain that? Is that like an old movie? That's what I.
Yeah, it goes like an old movie, and I perceive life as having a flickering quality. Some people maybe don't. For me, it flickers. And the skeletons. Well, I like to use skeletons. You know, it tones up a story. A good skeleton.
Do they show up again? Do the skeletons show up somewhere else?
In Pilgrimon, Bruder Furtner is a skeleton. I don't know where else I have skeletons, but I like skeletons. Yeah.
I was going to say, the name Ridley Walker itself seems to have that flickering quality, doesn't it? I was curious how you came up with that name.
The name Ridley Walker?
Yeah.
Well, some people have pointed out that the book before was Turtle Diary, in which a Ridley turtle appears. That's Ridley with 1 D. And I remember visiting the London Zoo, and the keeper very kindly took me around behind the tanks. And one of the times that I went around behind the tanks, he showed me this. He took out of a small tank a young baby Ridley, and I held it in my hand. A nice little thing, very compact and streamlined, and the form fitted the function and all that. And I suppose the name Ridley might have been lurking at one of the lower levels of my head, and the fact that he riddles and is concerned with riddles, and that he's a walker, he goes from place to place, so Ridley Walker seemed the right kind of a name. Yeah.
How did you ever get published? Did they recognize you as a genius?
I snuck up on them. That is to say, I became a published writer by getting a book published that was called What Does It Do and How Does It Work, which was about construction machinery. It was for children. And I got that because at the time I was an illustrator, and I used to paint and draw for my own amusement construction machinery. I liked it. We lived in Connecticut, and often in my spare time I would drive around. I'd find a construction site. I'd make a drawing of a power shovel or a bulldozer or a tractor shovel or whatever. And some friends of ours saw those drawings and said they thought it'd make a nice kind of a kid's book. And they had a friend who worked for Harper, and she set up an appointment for me to see Ursula Nordstrom, who was the head of the Department of Books for Boys and Girls, and she gave me a contract to do a book on construction machinery. So once I did that, I was a published author. And being a published author, I thought of doing another book and another book, and eventually, after getting a number of picture books done, with text, maybe it would be 10 typewritten pages, I thought, really, a grown man should be doing more than 10 typewritten pages. And I wrote The Mouse and His Child, which was around 200 pages. And after that, I thought, well, now I'm a novelist. I'm going to write books about 200 pages long. And I dried up. I didn't get another idea for about 2 years. And then I organized everything for a trip to London, planning a 2-year stay. And while it took me about a year to get everything organized, with schools for all of our 4 kids, and putting the dog in quarantine, and giving the pony to somebody, and the cat, and selling 2 cars, and got all that organized, and got an idea for a sequel to The Mouse and His Child called The Return of Manny Rat, and got about 79 pages into that, and came to London and was there for a while, and then I had a midlife crisis, and when the dust cleared, my wife and kids were back in the States and I was still in London, and in a short time I looked at some notes I had from, this was, by now it was 1970, and I looked up some notes I had about this lion, which I'd seen a photograph of it in a book on Mesopotamian art. This is from a sandstone relief of a lion hunt in the North Palace of King Ashurbanipal at Nineveh. And this is a close-up I took with a Polaroid. I don't know if you can make it out. This is the lion's back. Here's his mane. This is his fiercely frowning face. He is gripping the wheel of the king's chariot with his claws as the wheel, revolving, brings him up onto the spears of the king and the king's huntsmen. So he's dying in the act of attacking the wheel of the king's chariot. I won't take the time to read you some of my preliminary pages for The Lion of Boaz Jachin and Jachin Boaz, but that got a pretty good grip on me, this lion, and I swatted up Mesopotamian and Sumerian mythology and interpolated some of my own into it, and developed a background from which I expected my lion to come into some kind of a story. I was hoping maybe for a supernatural short story, and I had notes and accumulated pages. Nothing happened. That was before I went to London. And then when I was there in 1970, living alone then, I picked up the pages, and all of the 4 children of my first marriage were angry at me, and I thought about the anger. The story came to me just with one child, the son and the father, and the father leaves the son at home to be the old man, while the father tries to be the boy and going out into the world to become a man. And that's where I got my first novel. And from that, I continued to write adult novels. And now I always have a novel at some stage of work. I make a number of starts that never get anywhere, or sometimes, like the Medusa Frequency was started in 1982, and it hung fire, and at one point in 1983, I put it aside and started a science fiction version of it, and then I came back to it, and I did other things, and finally got it done and published in 1987. So I always have a novel. I always have something that I hope will become a novel going, and in between, shorter things happen. I do children's books. I have to keep doing them for economic reasons, to subsidize the novels. And I do them also because ideas come to me in that form, in the way somebody else might write poetry, having a short, concentrated idea. That's how it is with children's books. And from time to time, I get sucked into other things. So I began to hang out with some people from the ENO and got into writing a libretto for an opera, which undoubtedly never be produced. And I did a stage version of Ridley Walker for the Manchester Royal Exchange, and I'm now doing a commissioned play for them that involves a lot of music and dance, and I'm hoping to do a narrative version of that as a book for maybe the same age group as The Mouse and His Child, which is like from puberty to 103. And that's about where it is. So you asked the question, how did I get published? And that's that's how I did it. Yeah.
Is Riddley Walker such a delightful act of language production? I'm interested to know if it's translated into any other language.
No, I had offers, but I had to say no.
And I can't imagine that process of
Yeah.
translating that into another language.
Couldn't be translated.
You did have offers?
I had an Italian offer, and there were two. I think one was Italian, maybe one was French. And I said no because, somebody could do a parallel effort in a different language, but it wouldn't be Ridley Walker because all of the jokes and things are based on English. So that's that. It's not just the meaning, it's the language itself. Yeah.
How extensive was your conversation with the translators who proposed the projects? Did they propose directly to you, or?
I didn't have any conversations. Through my agent, I was told that I think these two publishers, foreign publishers, were interested, and I said, can't do it. Yes?
I was curious does Tolkien have any influence in Ridley Walker?
Tolkien? No.
Or and why you didn't provide a glossary? You made a map, you did provide a map.
I don't know. I guess in a way, when I saw how the language was coming out, I mean, in any case, I never expect a mass readership. And I thought, well, the price of admission is working out the language for yourself. Right. If you want to come on this trip with me, do it.
Well, there would be a lot of trips besides that.
Yeah, but I mean, in Pilgrimon, for example, I gave a bibliography and footnotes and references, and a lot of people thought I was being pompous. You can't please everybody. No, I agree with you. A glossary would have been helpful, and I can't justify why I didn't do it. It just seems right not to do it for that book.
You wanted to give something for some of the scholars.
No, as I think about it, to give a glossary would be like an actor stepping out of character. The guy's playing King Lear, going, whoa! No, wait, what I'm doing here, they're saying what they're saying. There's nobody there to explain it to you. It's like real life. Yes?
Will we ever see the return of the Rat?
Maybe when I'm dead, and I get famous, somebody will dig that up and say, here we see Hoban making a rectangular scaffolding from A to B with C and X. But as it stands now, it's just 79 pages of really, I don't know, I suppose you could say that it was transitional. I was getting to where I didn't want to write about animals and toys. I wanted to write about men and women, and I wanted to use all of my experience and all of my ideas and all of my feelings, and I was trying to burst out of the form that I was in, and I couldn't ever complete that thing. I was demanding too much of it to do it with rats. So it just, it's still around, but I don't expect it ever to get finished.
Aren't part of it published in one of the children's literature journals?
Yeah, in the Children's Literature and Education, published an extract with Manny Rat encountering an organ in a church.
So there's a little bit of that.
Yeah. It was published at Exeter University, that magazine. Yes?
In your opinion, do you think the movie Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome as a takeoff from Ridley Walker?
Well, it's a rip-off of some Ridley Walker stuff, and I guess, no, I didn't tell you lot, but I was telling other people that I was in Australia, I think it was 1986, where I was invited to the Adelaide Festival of the Arts, and I did some readings there. And having seen Mad Max 2, I thought that George Miller, the director, would be a good guy to direct Ridley Walker because he seemed to have a real good feel for the choreography of figures in a landscape. So somebody arranged for me to meet him, and he took me out to dinner very nicely with his scriptwriter. And I gave him a copy of Ridley Walker, and said I hoped he would give some thought to making a film of it. And I never heard from him again. And then the next thing, I began to get letters from people. Have you seen Mad Max 3? And you got ripped off. Did they give you credit? Did they give you money? And they didn't give me credit. They didn't give me money. But I talked to my agent about it, and he said, well, what it is that obviously this was a major influence, but that's all it is. It is not enough to sue him for. And so that's how it was. No. I hope he lies awake at night and thinks about it, but I don't think he does. Yes?
In the Medusa frequency, was there any particular inspiration for that device, the head zapping machine? And did you mean to suggest anything more by it than simply a kind of symbol of desperation people suffering from Blighters Rock will go to?
No, I don't remember. Can't remember when I thought of the head zapping machine. But what came, the development of the Medusa frequency, the first element was a particular olive tree that I saw on the island of Paxos. It looked as if a woman or a goddess had stepped out of it and left the emptiness behind her. And I used that in a story called Dark Oliver, which was published in the Observer magazine, the Sunday magazine of the Observer newspaper. And I never had a photograph of that tree. I had two photographs of another olive tree that I used to look at a lot. And from there to the head of Orpheus, I don't know. I think I have one of my first. Bear with me a moment. I brought it with me. Yeah, it should be in this lot. Yeah. This doesn't really answer your question, but it's a fun excursion. Yeah. How are we doing for time? Listen, I'll tell you something. If nobody stops me, I'm going to read you 7 pages here. Anybody want to give me any trouble here? All right. What this is some of the background thought out of which the Medusa frequency came. And again, it's a number of things from a number of places. So I have it divided up into, do I have it divided up into? Yeah, I sort of little subheads and so forth. And believe me, this does get to the head of Orpheus, and it's in due course. The sorcerer. Certain images persist in the mind. The famous drawing of the so-called sorcerer in the cave of Les Trois Frères in France is one of them. I know it only from sketches and photographs in books. That doesn't matter. The numinous image seeks us out. It finds its way to us through eons of darkness. The antlered figure of the dancing